Good morning, everybody. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and today I introduce to the Council of the District of Columbia our 2020 budget proposal. I just concluded a briefing with the council, and I want to acknowledge and thank all the members of my cabinet who have worked diligently on this budget. I especially want to acknowledge the mayor's budget team led by Jenny Reed. I'll give them a big round of applause. And the city administrator and his entire team, please give them a round of applause. And the deputy mayors who lead an outstanding and talented group of cabinet directors who have worked very hard to ensure that this budget represents not only our values, but our vision for how we make Washington, D.C. A more inclusive, prosperous, and growing city. So with that, I'm going to invite the city administrator and the budget director to join me at the podium, and we'll take questions and hand off to agency directors as needed. Any questions?
Mayor Brown?
Yes.
I talked to Chairman Mendelson upstairs. He expressed concerns about your budget relying on commercial property tax increases. His concern was essentially the district's booming revenues relies on a thriving commercial sector and the stability of the tax rates. What's your response to that?
Well, certainly, I listened just now to the members of the council and not only their questions, but the areas that they wanted to emphasize in the budget that met their goals. And as you heard, there was a lot of interest in our investments in housing and public transportation and neighborhood safety and trauma-informed services. So I think what you heard from the members of the council is the need and willingness to support those investments. Those investments don't happen without the revenues we identified. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What's the status with funding for the DC Housing Authority? I think there's like $300 million in different repairs or something along those lines.
We have been in conversation with the Housing Authority. I'll ask the CA to talk to you about the current operating subsidy, the fund balance that they currently have to operate for this year, as well as what we will include in our budget documents, the need for a study of the Housing Authority's finances and governance. You may recall that the council has introduced a piece of legislation to change the governance structure of the Housing Authority. And so we want to take a very thoughtful look at how we can support an independent authority. And we see some analogies to Metro and how we studied the problem, how they planned to use capital dollars to get into a state of good repair. So we're going to work very diligently with our partners over the next year to decide the best course of moving forward, but keeping in mind that there are many funds available in 2020.
Thank you, Mayor. So as the mayor indicated, we have a significant subsidy that already goes to the Housing Authority. In fact, that subsidy will be increasing in fiscal year 20 to over $120 million. And with respect to their ability to do maintenance and renovations, the council passed 2 years ago the ability for the Housing Authority to use its fund balance and funds unspent from the local rent subsidy program to do maintenance and renovations. We expect that fund would generate, or that fund balance will generate between $15 and $20 million just in fiscal year 20 for the Housing Authority to advance their repair and maintenance work for some of their facilities. As the mayor indicated, we need to really develop a comprehensive plan that looks at the governance issues for the Housing Authority and how it ought to be governed with respect to this sizable investment and the best way to finance and structure any additional investment that may come from the district to address that backlog.
Yes.
Follow-up. The authority says it needs $330 million in one fiscal year to make repairs. How do we get close to that?
I don't know that we know that they can spend 330 million or how they would spend 330 million. So refer to my earlier comments about getting to a plan that examines their governance and finances and how they're currently spending their money. Yes, Sam?
Yes, Mayor, I was listening to the conversation you had with Councilmember McDuffie. So are you going to be basically buying that Wendy's and closing it down there at the intersection of New York and Florida?
We need that space. Yes.
So no Wendy's there anymore.
Well, there is a private property owner involved, as I said earlier, and so we will be involved in some level of negotiation to try to acquire the property.
I heard the number $35 million.
Yes. I don't like to talk about numbers until we have a deal.
How many Frosties can that buy?
Funny. Good. Good. I don't eat Frosties. How much do they cost? I don't know. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Mayor Bowser, so you had the State of the District for us this week, you had the budget this week, and earlier in the year you told us that we'll get a better sense of your second-term vision with these developments. So how would you say that the budget and the address this week laid out your mission?
We have a real focus on doing everything that we can to make DC more affordable, from people from across the city, from all income strata, to people who have families, to people who are seniors, to people who have no children. And so this budget makes those types of investments across the district. It also is very focused on how we can have a stable economy, a growing economy that continues to attract businesses and families to the District of Columbia. That will ensure our future. And so we make those types of investments as well, including with transportation. Yes.
Hey, Russ, do you see the story today in the Post? I think it's been published elsewhere about gentrification in the city being more severe here in the district than anywhere else. Your reaction to that?
Well, certainly, Sam, we know that I'm sorry.
It's Bob.
I'm tough.
Thanks, Sam.
That sounded like Sam.
I'm so sorry, sir.
That's okay. Sorry, Sam.
You insulted him.
Yes, I saw it. And I think that we are and continue to try to, part of our task in the government is make sure that we have a growing, stable economy, which relies on businesses and people moving in and investment in neighborhoods across the city. What's also our task is making sure that people who live here are here to enjoy the new prosperity that we're creating in our city. And that's why you've heard me from day one talk about how we need to invest in more affordable housing. You will recall when I came into office, we doubled the amount of the Housing Production Trust Fund. People tend to forget that. When I became mayor, we were spending about $50 million in the Housing Production Trust Fund. Now with this budget, we've committed $130 million, plus a new preservation fund, plus a workforce housing fund, plus over $30 million committed to Homeward DC, committed to ending homelessness in the city. So we have steadily amped up our investment in affordable housing. Also, though, we can create all the affordable housing that we want. We have to make sure that DC residents can afford it. That's why we push for an increase to the minimum wage. That's why we transformed our TANF program to get people on the way to work who are experiencing unemployment for one reason or the other. That's why we created an infrastructure academy to train DC residents for higher paying jobs like in infrastructure, where the average pay is over $50,000 per year, upwards to $100,000 per year. So we're very focused on creating more affordable housing, but also making sure that we're putting our residents on track to get jobs that pay good wages that will allow them to afford a great life here in the district. So that's what we have to continue to do. Where the answer is not, I will tell you, is stopping making investments in neighborhoods. Okay, we want to encourage new amenities. We want to encourage new infrastructure. We want to encourage new housing at all levels. And that's what this budget does. All right, last question for you.
Mayor Bowser, Mayor Bowser, you've warned about writing checks that the city can't cash during recessionary times. As the council gets to work on your budget, what are the kind of new commitments you want them to be avoiding or steering clear of? Like, what are some examples of things that the city can't afford in recessionary times?
Well, we actually think that the council would do well to approve the budget that we sent them. And I mean that in all seriousness, that we have had an opportunity. Now, I've been on the council, so I know that there will be some changes, but we have had an opportunity for many months to work with the professionals you see behind me to really dig down into these budgets, to find savings, and to examine programs that have worked and have not worked. And this budget reflects our best thinking about those programs. We have also, where you see new investments from us, like with the early child care credit becoming permanent, or opening more early child care seats in wards 5, 6, and 7, for example, by making investments and easing overcrowding in Ward 3. These are all things that will allow us to attract and keep families, which makes for a stronger economy for the district. So I have a rule of thumb. Any new investment we make, I ask myself the question, how does this add to our ability to keep a growing city? And if that's an investment that doesn't allow for our continued stable growth, in my view, it's not an investment that tops the list. Yes?
I saw in the budget there is a little bit of money dedicated to studying the way per pupil funding, whether that's an effective way to fund schools. And I'm curious, why this year? Are there concerns over the funding model? Are there other models the city's potentially looking toward? Or, and is there a reason why you're studying this?
Sure. Let me ask the CA to address that question.
Thank you. So in 2018, there was a per pupil, there was a funding formula work group that was established that made a number of recommendations. One of those recommendations was to really look at how we spend and allocate at-risk dollars and other weights that we use to determine that we advance for different categories of students in the system. And so this study will allow us to take that recommendation and move further and actually evaluate our at-risk funding formulas, the weights that we use to determine what per pupil allocation goes for a given category of student, so that we can make sure that we have more transparency in that process and that we meet the intent of what those weights and at-risk dollars are for.
So it's more to look at the weights than the actual.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then, Sam, did you have a question?
We had a question that somebody else sent to us for the chief. We had video of a shootout, chief, on Newton Street Northwest, 200 block.
Northeast.
Okay, Northeast, 200 block. What can you tell us about that? I mean, these are guys that were just shooting up the street.
Okay, let me get to your question last, Sam, since it's off topic, and I'll take one last budget question here. Did you have a budget question?
This is obviously far ahead, but this working group in Ward 3 says the city needs like 2 new middle schools and a high school in the Wilson feeder pattern. Was there any consideration going forward how the city would begin even planning for that sort of thing, creating new schools to address overcrowding?
Well, we haven't determined that we're adding any new schools, but I will say that we have added new space at Key, Stoddard, and Deal that we would expect will help us with, and Lafayette, can help us with some of our concerns right now. Okay, Chief.
So the shooting at 20th and Newton, and if you've seen the video, it's pretty scary. You had 4 guys, all of them armed with firearms, broad daylight, appeared to be shooting at somebody off in the distance. Our police officers were able to get up there almost immediately on the scene. We've made pretty good progress in identifying those folks. Our ultimate goal is to ensure that they're held accountable for that behavior in our community.
So far, no arrests.
No arrests yet.
Chief, what can you tell us about this supposed hit and run involving Councilmember Trayon White's official vehicle from Monday night?
I don't know what you mean by official vehicle. We have an investigation right now into a hit and run that happened late Monday night, a little bit before midnight on 295, involving what we believe to be the council member's car. So the council member has been cooperative in the investigation. That's all I can comment on right now. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.